Hudson Institute, as all of you present here know, we've had a long and distinguished relationship with Japan for a significant amount of time, going back to the days of Hudson's founder, Herman Kahn, who was among the first of the Western observers to predict the rise of Japan as a great economic power. And as part of our long-standing relationships and dealings with Japan, Scooter and I had the pleasure last year of visiting Tokyo almost a year ago, and we had an absolutely fascinating meeting with Ms. Sakurai and Professor Takubo at the Japanese Institute for National Fundamentals, talking about U.S.-Japan relations, Japan's broader role in Asia, and we agreed that we needed to continue this important conversation, and so we're here for this seminar this morning. I will first introduce Ms. Sakurai. She really needs no introduction for those of you who follow Japan. She is one of Japan's leading journalists, having served more than a decade and a half with Nippon Television. In 1995, she received the Ohiya Soichi Prize, the country's highest award for journalism, for her coverage of the HIV-tainted blood scandal in Japan. In recent years, she is the author of numerous books and investigative reports on an array of issues, including national politics, international relations, and education reform. And we'll hear from Ms. Sakurai momentarily. Also with her is Professor Takubo, who is a professor at Kyoto University, which he joined after a very successful career with the GG Press. He also has received a prize for excellence in journalism in Japan, the Seiran Taisho Prize. He served as Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Dean of the Graduate School for Dean of the Graduate School for International Cooperation. Responding to Ms. Sakurai's presentation will be Seth Cropsey of Hudson Institute. Seth also needs no introduction. He is the former Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy in the Reagan and Bush administrations, and he is one of Hudson's leading scholars on naval strategy, defense policy, and Asian security affairs. We are looking forward to a very interesting presentation. Ms. Sakurai.
Well, thank you very much, and it is very nice meeting you again. And thank you for inviting us today. Hudson Institute, one of the most prestigious research institutes in the United States. I'm so honored to make a presentation here. And I hope today's presentation will contribute to the betterment of U.S.-Japan relationship. As you know, next year, the current Japan-U.S. Security Treaty will mark its 50th anniversary. Half a century ago, the leader of Japan at that time, Prime Minister Nobusuke Kishi, began the process of revising the previous treaty into its present form. He believed that as long as Japan depended on a foreign military to maintain its domestic security, Japan could never be truly an independent state. He therefore proposed revisions in the hope that the previously one-sided treaty could become more reciprocal in nature. Although mainstream media and opposition parties at that time fiercely opposed this new treaty, I believe that Prime Minister Kishi was right. Japan should indeed do its part to share the burden and responsibility with the United States so that we can move closer to establishing a truly reciprocal U.S.-Japan relationship. But successive Japanese administrations have failed to put forward to the public this simple, self-evident idea. I believe there are two reasons. One is the difficulty to revise the constitution. Second is Japan's overwhelming dependence upon U.S. military for her security. As to these points, I mentioned in the paper, so please refer to these points to the papers at your hand. And I skipped several paragraphs and would like to go on to the understanding of China. Big challenge for us now is how best to respond to a rising China. The way in which we respond, after all, will seriously affect Japan's future. On the one hand, the mutual dependence between China and Japan will basically continue to grow as the flow of people, goods, and money expand in an increasingly borderless world. The same would be true for the relationship between China and the United States and between China and Taiwan. The most pressing question, however, is how we should regard the essential nature, the fundamental realities of China, the fact that it is a single-party dictatorship, that it suppresses human rights, that it is engaged in an unrelenting build-up of its military. This last issue is a particularly grave concern for Japan. For Japan, China's military build-up is nothing but a threat. China's military spending has maintained double-digit growth for the past 21 years. The Pentagon, Britain's International Institute for the Strategic Studies, and other organizations have persistently criticized China's military spending for being opaque. Probably it has been difficult for China to understand such European and American concerns. After all, in 1996, the Chinese ambassador to Japan stated that although China was invaded by the major powers of the world, it was Japan that inflicted the gravest wounds on our nation. From this pain-filled history, he added, the Chinese people have learned that if a country is weak, it can be easily bullied. Further, at a regular press conference last December, the Chinese Defense Ministry spokesman said China's plan to build aircraft carriers and explained that carriers such as these were an indication or a symbol of a country's overall might. As you can see, for China, military build-up is a goal in itself. The Chinese understand all too well that military power is directly reflected in diplomatic power. China has simply been following the advice of the late US President Theodore Roosevelt, who famously said that one should speak softly while carrying a big stick. China's military build-up over the past decades is, from China's point of view, quite natural and not opaque. However, we the Japanese cannot help but have grave concerns. Let me give you some examples. How many times has the Chinese Navy violated Japanese territorial waters? How many natural gas fields around the medium line has China aggressively developed in the East China Sea, backed by its military presence, ignoring Japan's offer for cooperative development? How many times has China threatened to dispatch military ships if Japan tries to develop natural gas fields in this water? China has unilaterally made a territorial claim on the Senkaku Islands, islands that have historically been under the effective control of Japan. In 1992, China suddenly promulgated a law for territorial waters in the name of its president and declared that it would use force to expel any foreign ships that invaded Chinese territorial waters. Are these the actions of a normal country, I must ask? Here, regrettably, however, I must admit that the Japanese are extremely naive in terms of diplomacy. Japan has repeatedly given in and apologized much too easily. On August 15, 1995, at a time when Japan-China relations had deteriorated considerably, Prime Minister Tomiichi Murayama, who was also then the chairman of the Japan Socialist Party, issued what has come to be known as the Murayama Statement to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the end of World War II. He apologized as follows. I regard in a spirit of humility these irrefutable facts of history and express here once again my feelings of deep remorse and state my heartfelt apology. In the years since, this statement has repeatedly been used by China and South Korea to their advantage. At summit meetings, Chinese and South Korean leaders have made blatant demand, insisting Japan take actions to demonstrate the feelings of remorse and apology described by Prime Minister Murayama. Such demands have caused an enormous amount of frustration to build up within the Japanese. The Japanese politicians and government officials who prepared the Murayama statement bear, I believe, a grave responsibility for their actions. I do not believe that Americans may be able to fully imagine the kind of geopolitical tensions that can arise between a nation which rests on a continent such as China and a country that is basically an island nation such as Japan. Most Japanese regard the long post-war history of the Japan-US alliance as fundamentally different from the relationship between the US and China. Backed by its economic and military might, China has often behaved as if they were the representative of all Asia. It has blatantly intervened in the issue of textbooks in Japan, the visit of our prime ministers to Yasukuni Shrine, and various territorial rights matters. The way China is perceived in Japan differs greatly from the way it is viewed in the United States. We have no wish to cause unnecessary discord with China, nor do we intend to take an aggressive stance with our neighboring country. I believe every Japanese longs for establishing a friendly, normal relationship with a democratic and peace-loving China. We cannot help, however, but to take a strong stance against hegemonic China. For Japan, China's relationship with the United States is also a matter of concern. Robert Zelig, the Deputy Secretary of State in the Bush administration, stated that the U.S. was prepared to play a role in helping to ease any frictions that might arise between Japan and China. He also called upon China to become a responsible stakeholder. As U.S. administrations increasingly lean politically toward China, I cannot help but feel that the Washington-Beijing relationship differs considerably from the relationship between Tokyo and Beijing. Saying all this, Japan is faced with three choices for its future. First, Japan could further strengthen the Japan-US alliance, and in addition, Japan could work to strengthen its own role within this alliance. Second, Japan could move to establish closer relationship with China, diluting the alliance with the United States. Third, Japan could choose to dissolve the Japan-US alliance and decide to pursue an independent defense policy on its own. Most Japanese, including the members of JINF, our organization, would definitely pursue the first option, that is, to strengthen the Japan-US alliance with the eventual goal of increasing Japan's role in the alliance. However, some who support this option are nonetheless opposed to any moves to revise the constitution and firmly believe that Japan's military role should not be expanded beyond what it is today. Even with these differences, as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of the Japanese fundamentally support this option. However, when we study political trend in the United States and take into consideration